Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Joyner, founder and president of the Village Square. And on behalf of Village Square and Florida Humanities, we're delighted that you've joined us tonight for Hate Undone with our very special guest, Daryl Davis. That's Double D Blues you've been listening to by Daryl Davis. This program is part of a multi-year series of digital programs, UNUM Democracy Reignited, presented in partnership with Florida Humanities, exploring the past, present, and future of the American idea as it exists on paper, in the hearts of our people, and as that manifests in our lives. If you are not familiar with the work of Florida Humanities, we're putting their web address in the chat. Be sure to check them out. The chat window tonight will be closed, but you can ask questions anytime during the program by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And if you haven't taken our pre-event survey yet, if you'll take just a moment to do so now, we're dropping that link into the chat thread. Your honest and anonymous answers will help the Village Square with a major nationally scoped research effort to better understand divisions in the United States. Even if you've done the survey before or after another program, we ask that you complete it again this time. We are delighted to welcome streaming partners, McCourtney Institute for Democracy, National Institute for Civil Discourse, Listen First Project, USC Center for the Political Future, Common Ground Committee, Civic Health Project, Braver Angels, Unify, Bridge USA, Citizen Connect, Center for the Humanities at the University of Miami, Network for Responsible Public Policy, and our wonderful, very long-term partners, the Tallahassee Democrat and WFSU Public Media. If you want to do your part to support the cause of a healthy democracy, you'll get off tonight's Zoom and you'll think about subscribing or donating to a journalistic effort near you. If journalism dies, democracy will not be far behind it. And I hope you'll also take a moment to check out our streaming partners who we have the real honor to work with every single day. There are people who have their shoulder at the wheel of helping us find each other again in America. Tonight, I'll be sticking around to facilitate the program because this is my hero that we have brought to meet you tonight. But I have the distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. Nasheed Majouin, the Executive Director of Florida Humanities, who will join me in this endeavor tonight. Nasheed, you're coming on here. Dr. Majouin's extensive professional career in the humanities includes his past leadership at the James Eaton Sr. Southeastern Regional Black Archives at Florida A&M University, and the Art Museum and Archives at Hampton University. I can see you now. Hi, Nasheed.
Hello.
I'm going to keep going on your bio. Dr. Majouin has served on a host of boards, including the Blues Foundation, the Austin Arts Council, Arkansas Black History Commission, Virginia State Heritage Preservation Board, Visit Florida, and the African American History Task Force for the state of Florida. It is wonderful to have you with us. And do you ever sleep?
Oh, there's a lot of good work to be done, and I'm glad to partner with you. And this is a remarkable activity. Thanks for having me.
It is really a pleasure. Also, you're going to have to be my wing human tonight because I might just get a little jittery. And so if I like freeze up, because I really have been talking about Daryl's work for as long as I've been doing this work and I've known about it. So if I get kind of like starstruck, you'll come in and help me out, right?
Understandable. It's national icon we have here.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah.
So I am thrilled now to introduce our special guest tonight, Mr. Daryl Davis. And Eliza's going to pop some information about Daryl in the chat window, and we'll send that to you by email again so that you can follow up after the program. Daryl Davis is an international recording artist and leader of the Daryl Davis Band. He's played with a legendary blues band, formerly the Muddy Waters Band, which I remember that, and Chuck Berry. As an actor, Daryl has done film and television, including roles in the critically acclaimed HBO series The Wire. He is the author of the book Clandestine Relationships, and his documentary Accidental Courtesy got lots of attention from CNN, NBC, Good Morning America, NPR, The Washington Post, and others. He also just told us that he is finishing a second book, so we're very excited about that. Mr. Davis, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Liz. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nasheed. How are you?
Good evening. Nice to talk with you. Looking forward to
My
the
pleasure.
conversation. Yes, yes.
So as I was prepping for this, I looked at our past program was with Chloe Valdry, who you may know her work.
I know her well.
But she writes about you. And so I actually had a question in there that was, please tell us the story of Daryl Davis. So I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to have you here tonight and say that we're going to turn it over to you, Mr. Davis, and you can tell us your own story, and we'll be back in a few minutes on the flip side.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm age 64. I'll be 65 next month. But let's go back to my childhood. I was the child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up all over the world, traveling starting at the age of 3. And how it works is you're in a foreign country for 2 years with the American Embassy, and then you come back home here to the States. You're here for a few months, possibly a year, and then you get reassigned to another country for 2 years. So all of this started for me in 1961 at the age of 3. Today, I'm a professional musician. I have my degree in music, and I perform all over the world and all over this country. But back then, my first exposure to school was overseas. I did kindergarten. I'm from Chicago originally, but I left the States at age 3 for 2 years. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, and seventh grade overseas. In between, I was back home here going to school. Now, my classes overseas were filled with kids from all over the world. Anybody who had an embassy there, their kids were in my school. My classmates were from Nigeria, Japan, Russia, France, Germany, Italy, Sweden, Australia. You name it, if they had an embassy, we all went together with their kids as well. So that was my baseline for what school should be. Let me just show you an example of my second grade class. This is 1965-66. And what you see there are a multitude of kids from all over the world. In fact, myself there on the back row, I'm one of the 2 Black kids on the back row there. And 2 other children, one little boy and one little girl, are from the States. There were more Americans in the school, but we were the only 3 in second grade there. You see a Black teacher there and a white teacher. You would never see that in our country back in 1965 in an integrated school like that. But that was my baseline for what school should be. So that's what I was accustomed to. But every time I would come home, I would be in either all Black schools or Black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And even though desegregation was passed by the Supreme Court 4 years before I was born, in 1954, I was born in 1958, schools did not integrate overnight. It took years and years for schools to become integrated. And we're still even working on that in 2023, folks. So anyway, I would be either in all Black schools or Black and white schools. And there was not the amount of diversity in my classrooms back here in my own country that you saw there from overseas. Those kids were from all over the world in my second grade class. So one time when I came back, I was age 10 in the 4th grade. And I went to an integrated school in which I, in the 4th grade, and a little Black girl in second grade were the only Black kids in the entire school. Let me show you my 4th grade class and see if you can find me. There I am there on the back row. That's my 4th grade class. So some of the guys that you see there on the back row with me, we're all age 10. Some of them were Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join the Scouts, which I did. It was a lot of fun. Got to go camping, tie some knots, things like that. We're talking 1968. Well, we were in Belmont, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. And right next door to Belmont are the towns of Lexington, Massachusetts, and Concord, Massachusetts. So we had a march on Patriots' Day from Lexington to Concord to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. The Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Brownies, the Girl Scouts, the 4-H Club, and several other organizations. So I'm marching with my Cub Scout troop. I am the only Black participant in this march. The streets are blocked off. The sidewalks on either side are lined with nothing but white people waving and smiling and cheering, having a great time. We all were having a great time. until we got to a certain point in this parade route when suddenly, boom, I'm getting hit with bottles, soda pop cans, and just small debris from the street by just a small group of white spectators off to my right on the sidewalk, mixed in with the larger crowd. Not everybody was throwing things, just about 4 or 5 people. I remember there being a couple of kids, perhaps a year or two older than me. I didn't know them, and perhaps their parents, because there were a couple of adults as well. Well, when this happened, and I looked over and saw them, my first thought was, because I had no precedent for this kind of behavior. You know, we didn't do that kind of stuff overseas. Everybody got along. So my first thought was, oh, these people over here, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. It wasn't until my den mother, my cub master, my troop leader all came running over and huddled around me and quickly escorted me out of the danger that I realized I was the only person getting this special protection. I was the only person getting hit. So naturally, I questioned them. What did I do? I didn't do anything to them. Why are they doing this? And all they would do is shush me and rush me along, tell me to keep moving, everything will be fine. So I kept on moving, but they never answered my question. So at the end of the day, when I got home, my mother and father, who were not present at the parade, were fixing me up, cleaning me up, putting Band-Aids on me, and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them the truth. I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. And for the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Now, believe it or not, at the age of 10, 1968, I had never heard the word racism. I had no clue what my mom and dad were talking about. That word and that behavior were not in my sphere. I did not grow up around that. I grew up with people from all over the world, and none of them treated me that way. So my parents had to be deceiving me. They were pulling my leg. I did not believe my parents because my 10-year-old brain could not process the idea that someone who had never laid eyes on me, never spoken to me, knew absolutely nothing about me, would want to inflict pain upon me for no other reason than the color of my skin. It made no sense. So, and furthermore, the people who were doing that to me looked just like my friends, my little friends there in 4th grade, or my American friends overseas from the embassy, or my little French or Dutch or German or Swedish or Danish friends. They didn't behave like that. So my parents couldn't be telling me the truth. People don't do things like that. But I quickly found out that my parents were right. And so I formed a question at that age of 10 in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And now I've been looking for that answer for almost 55 years, because I'll be 65 next month. I'm 64 now. So after graduating college with my degree in music, I began traveling again. And I travel all over the world performing. So when you take my childhood travels with my parents and now my adulthood travels as a musician, and you combine them, I have now been in a total of 62 countries on 6 continents, and I have performed in all 50 of our states. What does that mean? It means that I have been exposed to a multitude of skin colors, ethnicities, cultures, ideologies, religions, etc. And all of that has helped shape who I have become. And I can tell you something, no matter how far I go from our country, the United States, whether it's right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people may be who I encounter, perhaps they don't look like me, they don't speak my language or worship as I do, I always conclude one thing, and that is that everybody I meet is a human being. And as such, every human being wants these 5 core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be treated fairly and truthfully. And everyone basically wants the same things for their family as we want for our family. And if we all can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a culture or society in which we are unfamiliar or uncomfortable, I can guarantee you that your navigation of that situation, that culture, that society will be much more smooth and much more positive. So lo and behold, I was playing a gig one night with a country band in which I was the only Black person in this band. And they were pretty well established here in the state of Maryland. I live in Maryland now. And I joined them. Country music had made a resurgence. And they played a place in a town called Frederick, Maryland. Frederick, Maryland is located about an hour and 20 minutes north of Washington, D.C. There was a bar there, a lounge called the Silver Dollar Lounge. The Silver Dollar Lounge had a reputation of being an all-white lounge, that Black people were not welcome. Now, there were no signs, that you all have seen in the history books, or if you're old enough, you've seen them in person, where it says colored restroom, colored drinking fountain, all that kind of thing. No signs like that, but you knew if you were Black, you were not welcome there. And, when you go somewhere where you're not welcome and alcohol is being served, it's not always a good combination, folks. So here I was in the Silver Dollar Lounge. And my first time in there, the band had played there before. And so I'm the only Black person in the band, only Black person in the lounge. And we did the first set, we took a break, and I'm following the band over to the band table to sit down on the break. I feel somebody from behind put their arm across my shoulder. Now, I don't know anybody in this place, right? Except for the band. I see them all ahead of me. So I'm turning around trying to see who's touching me. It was this white gentleman, I'd say 15 to 18 years older than me. Big smile on his face. And he says, "Man, I sure like your all's music." I said, "Thank you." And I shook his hand. And he says, "Man, I love your piano playing. This is the first time I ever heard a Black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." Well, I was not offended, but I was rather surprised because, I considered it a compliment, not necessarily the Black person part, but to be compared to the late, great Jerry Lee Lewis. But I was surprised that this man, being at least a decade and a half older than me, did not know the Black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's piano style, which I quickly explained to him that Jerry Lee got it from the same place I got it from Black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where that rockabilly, rock and roll piano style came from. He goes, "Oh, no. I ain't never heard no Black man play like that except for you." So I'm thinking, okay, well, this guy maybe never saw Little Richard or Fast Domino. I said, "Look, man," I said, "I know Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee is a very good friend of mine. He's told me himself where his influences came from." Well, the guy didn't believe that either, but he was fascinated with me and wanted me to go back to his table with him and let him buy me a drink. Now, I don't drink alcohol, but I went back to his table, let him buy me a cranberry juice. He paid for it, took his glass, and he clinked my glass and cheered me. And then he says, "This is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a Black man." Well, now I'm sitting there completely baffled because now you already have my background, right? I've been all over the world. I've sat down with anybody and everybody. How is it that this man, a decade and a half older than me, had never sat down before with a Black man? I was baffled. And so innocent, I wasn't trying to be facetious. Innocently, I asked him, I said, "Why?" And I was naive. And he didn't answer me. He stared at the tabletop. I asked him again. And his buddy sitting next to him elbowed him and said, "Tell him. I said, "Tell me." He looked back at me just as plain as day, and he said, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." Well, I burst out laughing because now I didn't believe him. I know a lot about the Ku Klux Klan. I know they don't just come up and hug some Black guy and want to buy them a drink and hang out with them and praise any kind of musical talent they may have. It doesn't work that way. So I figured the guy's, pulling a joke on me. I'm laughing. He goes into his pocket, pulls out his billfold, flips through it, hands me his Klan membership card. Yes, card-carrying member. I recognize the Ku Klux Klan insignia, a red circle with a white cross and a blood drop in the center. I stopped laughing. This thing was for real. So it wasn't funny anymore. I gave it back to him, We talked about the Klan and some other things. And he was very friendly, gave me his phone number, wanted me to call him whenever I was to return to this bar, because he wanted to bring his friends. As he put it, he wanted them to see the Black guy who played like Jerry Lee Lewis. I'm not sure he called me a Black guy to his friends, but that's how he explained it to me. So I would call him every 6 weeks. And, we were on a rotation with other bands there on the weekends. And so he'd show up. He'd bring Klansmen and Klanswomen. They didn't come in robes and hoods. They came in regular street clothes. And they'd watch me play. They'd get out on the dance floor and dance to our music. So I got to know some of them, the ones who wanted to meet me. On the breaks, I'd make my way over to his table. But a couple of them, when they'd see me coming, would get up and move to the other side of the room. Like, we don't want to talk to you. We don't want to touch you. We just want to look at you, which was fine by me. The others would hang there and they were curious. And, we would sit down and meet and talk. So this went on for a while until I quit that band at the end of that year. And I went back to playing rock and roll and rhythm and blues and whatever else was going on. Well, a few years later, it dawned on me, Daryl, you blew it. The answer to your question that has been plaguing you since the age of 10 fell right into your lap. You didn't even realize it. Who better to ask that question of, how can you hate me when you don't even know me, than to ask someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has over 100-year history of practicing hating people who don't believe as they believe and who do not look like them. So I got back in contact with that guy. I decided I would write a book. I would travel around the country and interview Grand Dragons and Imperial Wizards and rank and file Klansmen and Klanswomen and ask that question and write a book about it. I never set out to convert anybody. I just want to find out why. Why do you hate me? How can you hate me? You don't even know me. So in the course of traveling around the country, I went up north, went down south, went to the Midwest, went to the West, and interviewed hundreds of Klan members. Some would talk to me, some would not talk to me. Some wanted to fight, got violent and things like that. Fortunately, that was, few and far between. But those who talked to me, did the interview, I put out the book, and now I'm putting out my second book. I've been in this field of race reconciliation going now on 41 years. So I'm going to show you a picture from about almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago. Here, I went to a Klan rally, and you see I'm a little thinner there, got a little more hair on my head. It's towards the end of the rally. The fiery cross is, the flames are dying out. But I asked a Klansman if he would pose for a picture with me, which he did. So that was 29 years ago. Here's one from 7 years ago. This one here that you're looking at is in the state of Maryland. This one here is in the state of Missouri from about 7 years ago. There were a lot more Klansmen and Klanswomen there, but the rally is over, and they're over at a picnic table just out of the camera shot, getting food and beverages. They always leave some Klansmen around the burning cross because the cross will fall over at the end and they don't want anything to catch on fire. So they stand guard there. Now, what do I do at Klan rallies? I talk to people, I converse with them, because I'm a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. Nothing gets resolved without conversation. And the greatest weapon against racism, to combat racism, is also the least expensive weapon. It's free. It's also the most underused weapon. It's called conversation. Today, I don't know what is up, but people want to engage in cancel culture. That's not how you do it. You do it by conversing, having these conversations. This guy, what you see I'm doing right here. When I came on that rally ground that day, the guy you see facing me with the mask on, he threatened my life when I came on that rally ground. That was 7 years ago. Ever since then, he's been sending me a Christmas present every year, and he is no longer in the Klan. And I own that robe and that hood. It's now in my collection. So this is the power of conversation. This is the power of applying those 5 core values that I told you everyone wants. if we can learn to do that, we can definitely get ahead. And this works not just on racial divide, but also on political divide or any kind of adversarial thing. You know, in fact, I'll tell you what, let's take race off the table for a second. There are other hot topics out here. We have abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the war in the Middle East, the war between Russia and Ukraine, the presidential election. Somebody's on one side, somebody's on the other. Apply those 5 core values. Have civil dialogue. You may not agree, you may agree, but at least you can navigate that situation in a more positive and constructive and productive manner. And that is what we need. It bothers me a great deal as an American that we call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my country, I'm a patriot, but I do have a problem with that statement. Now, perhaps we are the greatest nation on the face of this earth technologically. After all, we Americans, we built the technology to put a man on the moon. And when astronaut Neil Armstrong was up there on the moon, walking around, talking about one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, we were able to talk to Neil Armstrong live, all the way from Earth, all the way to the moon, via satellite radio phone. We, Americans, invented that technology. Everybody sitting in your home or wherever you may be, watching this program right now, obviously you have internet. You also have a cell phone, and you also have email. You can talk to anybody on the face of this earth. You hit a few numbers, hit a few letters and words, hit send, and you're talking, you know, people in Florida, you can talk to people out in California, you talk to people in China, in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, wherever you want to talk. How is it that we as Americans can talk to people as far away as the moon or anywhere on this planet, but yet there are still so many of us who have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door, because that person is a different skin color or a different persuasion, a different religion, a different whatever. So it seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth, perhaps our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And when we get them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are. Because folks, we are living in the 21st century. We are living in space age times. So tell me, why are we still thinking with Stone Age minds? So at this point, I want to invite back my co-hosts, Nasheed and Liz, to join me for a conversation and answer some of the questions they may have and you might have.
Okay, I'm already having problems with freezing up because I'm so overwhelmed. I'm not going to get through this without crying some. It is really hard to imagine at a time when many of us cannot get through a Thanksgiving dinner with someone we disagree with, how in the world you could form these relationships and keep them over the course of years when it was with people who so foundationally disapproved of you. How do you do that? How did you do that?
Okay, well, let me give you my favorite quote of all time, and then let me show you how it applies. My favorite quote of all time is by Mark Twain, the author, and it's called the travel quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And this is so true. every time we travel, every time we go somewhere, see something new, meet somebody different, we are broadening our horizons. Now, all that travel that I described to you that I've done does not make me a better human being than someone who has done less travel. What it does is it gives me a broader perspective of humanity. And that's what I want to share with people who have done less travel. But understand something, the travel that I have done involved me leaving this country, going across the Atlantic Ocean or across the Pacific Ocean, or traveling from East Coast to West Coast in this country, et cetera. And I started that at age 3 in 1961, and I'm still doing it. But today we have the internet. We can travel virtually. We can take a tour of Venice. We can take a tour of the Eiffel Tower sitting in our bedroom on our laptop. We can go to a 3D tour of these places, meet people in other countries, establish relationships. I call it walking across the cafeteria. But before I get to that, I would say all these different cultures and things that I've been exposed to, all of it helps shape who I've become. And I've been exposed to so many different cultures that when I deal with people like neo-Nazis, KKK people, I just consider them another culture. It's not a culture that I would subscribe to, but I consider them another culture, and I treat them as such. I show them the respect that I would sit down and listen to them. I allow them to be heard. And when I say respect, I'm not saying I respect what they have to say. I'm saying I respect their right to say it. And I'll sit down and listen to them. And in turn, guess what? They sit down and listen to me. All right. So I'm not trying to change their minds. I'm giving them other thoughts, other ideas. And when they absorb those things, many of them end up changing their own minds because, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm just trying to find out why.
Well,
and go ahead.
You've clearly been able to find their humanity inside of that relationship.
Exactly. And it involves that conversation, not cancel culture that we see so much of today.
Yeah, I want to contribute to that point. Early on in your life, you were equipped with the tools to listen and understand and not prejudge a situation or a person. And that is a critical part of engaging in the civil discourse. You understand and and you're not afraid to encounter something that's new or different from the way you see things.
This is very true, Nasheed. And I would like to think, but I can't be certain. I would like to think that I would be that way even if I had not done all that travel. But there is a possibility. If I had grown up here in my own country all my 64 years, would I be involved in this, or would I be staying as far away from those people as I could?
So we have, I'd like to push back on that slightly, because if you're encountering the members of the Ku Klux Klan around the country and they decided at some point to make that change on their own, that's because those 5 values you mentioned were deep down in them at their core, and you knew how to address that. So that means maybe that altruism, that intrinsic element of good naturedness was in them in the beginning, and you found a way to open that door. But that door was open to you early on.
Yes, indeed. And people are not born with that kind of hatred. I think what it is this: all of us, probably you, probably Liz, and anybody out there viewing or listening, as children, we probably heard the old adage, a tiger does not change its stripes, a leopard does not change its spots. And so why would I think that a Klansman or Klanswoman would change their robe and hood? That's who they are, just like the tiger and the leopard, but I was wrong, okay? A tiger cannot change its stripes, neither can a leopard change its spots, because they were born with those stripes and those spots. A Klansman or Klan member is not born with that robe and hood. That is a learned behavior. A neo-Nazi is not born with a swastika. That is a learned ideology. So what can be learned can be unlearned. And it's a matter as you said, soliciting that humanity in them. And that comes from listening to one another. You cannot expect anyone to listen to you if you're not willing to listen to them.
That's true.
So there are a couple of questions from the audience that were sort of on target here. They want to know, when you went to rallies, were you afraid that you might be hurt or killed? And then did you bring others for backup just in case?
That's a good question. No, I was not afraid. And I'll tell you why. There are very few things that frighten me in life. I don't know why. And people have often wondered about that. And I've wondered about it myself. But no, I was not afraid. But also, there are two kinds of rallies. There are public Klan rallies and there are private Klan rallies. So what's the difference? The public Klan rally would be like in a public park. So they have to go to City Hall, apply for a permit, to hold a rally, just like, any of us would if you wanted to have a family reunion or sell hot dogs and lemonade or whatever, we do in parks. We get a permit. All right. So they have to do the same thing, but it's a public park. So therefore, the public can come. Now, if there is violence and people throwing things and, there's going to be physical mayhem, there's going to be a barrier of police between protesters and the people participating in the rally, in the Klan rally. All right. But if there's not that kind of violence, say the park is in a town that is welcoming of that kind of ideology, then chances are you can just walk up freely and talk to these people. So those are public rallies which anybody can go to. A private rally is held usually on a Klan person's property or somebody's property that they know. And you just can't walk on private property unless you are invited. So over time, as I developed relationships with Klan leaders, like a Grand Dragon means state leader. Imperial Wizard means national leader. So as I developed relationships with some of these leaders and they began trusting me, they would invite me to private rallies. So I would be on that private property, watching them parade around in their robes and hoods around a big burning cross and proclaiming white power and all sort of kind of stuff. Now, granted, there were some people there who did not want me there and did not like the idea of my being there. However, they had to obey their leaders. If the leader invited me, there is a regimented chain of command, and they cannot go against that. It's a kind of like a military chain of command. So while they didn't like me there, there's nothing they could do about it.
So I'm assuming you gained their trust in some ways by letting them be them. I mean, how did they start to trust you? To bring you into inner circle?
By applying those 5 core values. I'm just trying to see if I could find something for you and show it to you. Let me just show you this right here. I want you to listen to what this Imperial Wizard has to say at a rally that I was at. He uses the N word there, but that's the world that I live in. That's the world that they practice.
This is CNN.
One second.
Davis is one of the few African Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
Has friendship transcended the color barrier? Listen to Kelly at a Klan rally.
All right, man, the hell I'm back, because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle, CNN Sunday Morning.
Okay. You heard that Imperial Wizard say, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. In that one sentence, he didn't realize it. He used 3 of those 5 core values I just told you about. I told you, Everybody wanted to be loved. Everybody wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. We all want to be treated fairly. And we all want the same things for our family as they want for their family. He said, I respected him. That's one of those values. He said, I sat down and listened to him. That means I allowed him to be heard. That's a second value. And because I respected him and sat down and listened to him, he said he respected me and sat down and listened to me. That's treating each other fairly.
Right.
He named 3 of those values, okay? And as a result of my applying those values time and time again, every time I would meet with him, he quit the Ku Klux Klan and renounced it and shut down the group. He didn't pass it down to his second in command when he quit. He shut it down. And today I own that robe and hood that you saw him wearing. By applying those values, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, because he didn't become that way overnight. He's not going to lose it, overnight. It's like this gut that I have on here that you can't see because I'm hiding below the screen, right? So, listen, I used to be skinny like Nasheed here, but I put on some weight, over years. I'm trying to lose it, and I am losing it.
It's the camera. I'm right there with you.
But I'm not going to lose it overnight. I didn't put it on overnight. I'm not going to lose it overnight.
So can I pull on that thread a little bit? You said, so canceling people is not the way to get this done. But talk a little bit more about why, and compared to what you've done, which clearly has worked.
Okay, listen, our society, our country, our life, our job, these things can only become one of 2 things. Our country can only become, 1, that which we sit back and watch it become, or 2, that which we stand up and make it become. So we all as individuals have to ask ourselves, do I want to sit back and see what my life becomes, what my job becomes, what my country becomes? Or do I want to stand up and make my job, make my life, make my country become what I want to see? And that's a question that we all have to answer individually. And in order to do, if you choose the latter, the only way you're going to do that is by assimilating with other people, getting to know them, because you're not here by yourself. And I call it walking across the cafeteria. All right, we can do it physically or we can do it virtually. Let me tell you, for example, pre-COVID, people in office buildings, corporations, companies, or schools, diverse places where you have students or employees of different backgrounds. They're working on the same project. They're getting along. They might even share the same cubicle while they work on that project. But what happens at 12 noon? They go downstairs to the cafeteria, and Blacks sit with Blacks, Hispanics sit with Hispanics. This group sits with the same group of their people. This is called self-segregation, right? We self-segregate. Does that mean that these people are racist? No, not necessarily. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity. I never knew familiarity because every 2 years I was in some strange place, right? So everybody was familiar to me. So that's why I can adjust to different people, right? So anyway, I say this. Now, if you walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table, and they say, oh, no, go back to your own table, get back over there. Then yes, there's a problem, and it has to be addressed, and it should be addressed, okay? But I would say this, once or twice a week, leave your comfort group, walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table, because you have a lot to teach them, you have a lot to learn from them. And in the process, you will make a new friend and you will broaden your horizons. And if you can't do it physically because you telecommute, then get online and call one of your coworkers in some other country or some other state and have a chit chat with them, during non-working hours or whatever, or make an appointment during working hours to talk with them, after you get off work. Sit down and just get to know one another. Learn about their families, learn about, what they practice, what they do at home, what they eat, et cetera, et cetera. This broadens our humanity. That's called walking, that's my term, walking across the cafeteria, in person or virtually.
I love it. Daryl, I have a question. Now we're talking about, you've mentioned your age several times and the geographical differences that you've encountered domestically and internationally. I'm curious to know if there was any consistency in the generation and the age of the people who are open to your dialogue.
And actually, let me tag on to that an audience question. They wonder if you've noticed any difference between people in the North and the South on this point.
Yeah.
Both questions, excellent. No, it all depends upon the individuals. I mean, I know young people who are just as feisty as some of the older people. Some older people who are set in their ways, but they wouldn't sit down and talk. Others want to fight. Unfortunately, I've been involved in violent confrontations because I'm going to defend myself if somebody puts their hands on me, of course. But fortunately, like I said, those have been few and far between. And even some of those people, who engage in violence with me, some of them have come back to me. Not all of them. Have come back to me and apologized and sat down and talked. And some of them are now out and have become friends of mine.
Goodness, amazing.
Because it's a learned behavior. So we have to get through our head what can be learned can become unlearned.
Mm.
And if we had no hope, then why even bother trying to change things? You can't say, well, I want to change things, but then not get out there and do something about it and realize it's going to take time.
All right, so this is truly a study in human decency. Sometimes you have the discussions with people and there may be some apathy or reluctance or anxiety in trying to influence change. I know we've talked about change and innovation, but at the core, we're saying, and we're making an argument that there's a level of decency in everyone and expect
That's
that.
right.
We should expect that.
100%. And you mentioned, I think Liz, you mentioned about somebody, not wanting to go to dinner at their family's home because of political differences. We saw more of that in the last few years than we've ever seen before. I'm not going to Thanksgiving dinner with my family because my sister voted for so-and-so and I voted for this one. And I just can't talk to her. That's cancel culture right there. That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, no matter who is going to become president, that person is only going to be there for a minimum of 4 years, for a maximum of 8 years. How long have you been with your family? Decades? And your best friend? Decades? Are you going to throw away decades of a relationship over somebody who's only around for 4 to 8 years? Come on, that doesn't even make common sense. It's not rocket science, So when you put it in that kind of perspective, then you do some introspection and say, you know what? Okay, so he or she voted for so-and-so. It wasn't my choice, but let me listen to them and see why. What happened in her life or his life that gave them reason to vote? Oh, well, maybe I understand that now. Okay, well, I wouldn't have done it, but I see why you did it. And then maybe they'll understand why I voted for this one. And so we can agree to disagree, or we can agree with that person, or they can agree with us. But we have to have that civil dialogue, not cancel people out. And see, here's what we do. We have to understand something. One's perception is one's reality. Everybody knows that. Even if it's not real, it's their reality. And you cannot change somebody's reality. They only know what they know. And if you attack what they know, they're going to push back. They're going to push back because you are attacking what they think is real. So never try to change somebody's reality. If you want their reality to change, what you do is this. You offer them a better perception or better perceptions. And if they resonate with one of your perceptions, then they will change their own reality because their perception becomes their reality. I'll just give you a quick example, hypothetical one. Let's say, Liz, you have a young 7 or 8 year old son, and he goes to a magic show with his buddies. And he comes home and tells you, Mom, you're not going to believe this. This magician asked for a female volunteer and 50 women raised their hand. And he picked one out of the audience, brought her up on stage and had her climb into this long box and stick her feet out the hole at that end and put her head out the hole at this end. And then he closed the lid and he took a chainsaw, went right down the middle of the box. He cut her in half. Then he told her to wiggle her feet, and she wiggled her feet. And you say, listen, it didn't really happen like that. Yes, it did. I was there. You weren't even there. I saw it with my own eyes. You weren't even there. See what happens? You attacked his reality. He knows what he saw. He saw a man cut a woman in half and she wiggled her feet. And you were not there, and you have no right to tell him what he didn't see and it wasn't real. Okay? You don't attack his reality. And to make it even more real, he tells you after the guy cut the box in half and she wiggled her feet, he took the half of the box with the feet and moved it over there to stage right, and took the half of the head and moved it over there to stage left.
So there's lots of evidence, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then he tells you the magician walked over and talked to the lady's head, and she talked back to him, right? And then he brings the two halves back together. He does this abracadabra incantation over the lid of the box, and then he opens it up, and she climbs out full form, no blood, back together. He cut her in half and he put her back together. And you say, listen, that's an illusion. No, it's not. I'm telling you, right? You've attacked his reality again. And so now he's mad. So, and he's canceling you out. What you do is you don't attack his reality. You offer him a better perception. You say, listen, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. But do you think it's possible that maybe, just perhaps, when he asked for a female volunteer and you say he picked one of the women out of the audience and brought her up on stage, you think that maybe that woman might work for him? Maybe he planted her in the audience and she travels all over the country with him. She knows the trick and she sits in the same seat in every theater that they go to. So he always knows where to find her. And when she climbs into the box, there's already a pair of mannequin dummy legs laying on the floor of the box that are wearing the same stockings and shoes that she has on. So she just picks up those legs and shoves them out the hole. And she brings her own knees up under her chest. So her whole body is on that half of the box. So when he cuts the box in half, the saw never even touches her. And when he says, wiggle your feet, she just shakes those poles and the feet wiggle. But now when he separates the boxes, those feet can't move anymore. So he has to distract you from looking at those feet. So he goes over there to her head. Of course, the head's going to talk back. The whole body's over there. So now you're not focusing on those feet anymore. You're following him. And then when he brings them back together, she just pulls those legs out, leaves them on the floor of the box, and she climbs out. And then your son says, you know, that might be the only way that could work. So you've offered him a better perception. He resonated with that perception, and now that perception becomes his reality.
And to be able to do that, you have to be talking to him. You have to be sitting next to him. You have to be in relationship.
Exactly. A missed opportunity for conversation is a missed opportunity for reconciliation.
Well, you know, I've learned something here because
you didn't know the trick.
Yeah, well, definitely didn't know the trick. But to start that off, you had to give the respect of accepting his reality, whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
From the beginning, you had to give one of those values. You had to give that person respect, and in return, they allowed you to speak and share their alternatives. They listened to you. So you provide
that value, treating each other. You nailed it, man. That's it. You know, you don't have to respect what they're saying, but show them the respect that you will listen to them. Okay, because people want to be heard, they want to be respected, and then in turn they reciprocate. And that's the fairness. That's the fair core value.
So there's an amazing point in accidental courtesy in the movie, which I highly recommend everybody. You can watch it on Amazon. Do it. When you are about to get married to a white woman, you're in the room with one of your friends who was currently in the KKK. And the producer asks, well, wait, he asked the KKK member, you're going to this wedding, you don't believe in interracial marriage. Why are you going? And his answer was, it's Daryl. So talk about that.
Yeah, listen, that guy that you're talking about, okay, check this out. He was the Grand Dragon of Maryland at one time, which means state leader, Okay. Now, he went to prison. He went to prison for 4 years for conspiring to bomb a synagogue up on Liberty Road in Baltimore, Maryland. All right. He continued running the Klan from within the prison through his guy on the outside. When he got released 4 years later, he took it back over and continued running it. He got into some trouble a couple years later, went back to prison for 3 years for assault with intent to murder 2 black men with a shotgun.
Wow.
So he did 7 years in prison. All right. While he was Grand Dragon of the Klan, conspiring to bomb a synagogue and shoot up people or whatever. You don't get paid money to be a Klan leader. You might get a couple, a small stipend out of the Klan dues, but you have to have a regular job. Grand Dragon, Exalted Cyclops, Great Titan, Imperial Wizard, these are all titles. You have to have a regular job. His regular job, while he was in the Klan, was Baltimore City police officer. He was not a police officer undercover in the Klan gathering intelligence. He was a bona fide Klansman on the Baltimore police force. All right. And anyway, he went on to become one of my best friends. He got out of this because of me, because of our friendship. And that's why he came to my wedding. He invited my then girlfriend, now my wife, over to Christmas dinner at his home. He came to our wedding. And do you know, he sent me a nice letter, saying, how impressed he was. He said, your wedding was just like ours. He was expecting, because he never been to a black wedding.
Right.
It's not a black wedding, it's a wedding,
Right.
It's that exposure. It's that walking across the cafeteria. Now, I told you the story about the Klansman who walked up to me when I came off the stage at the Silver Dollar Lounge. That Klansman, he and I became friends and got me started on this journey of traveling and interviewing these people. He literally walked across the cafeteria to talk to me. All right. He left his Klan buddy at the table because he liked the music I was playing. He never saw a black guy play music like that, even though he didn't realize it was black music. Right. All right. In a country band. And he walked across the lounge to talk to me. And as a result, a friendship happened. And that's what got me here today. So walking across the cafeteria does work. Whether we do it or whether they do it, it is effective.
Yeah, another point that story reminded me of early in this conversation was consistent communication and patience. You mentioned several times that you would correspond by letter or you would call someone every 6 weeks, and you didn't expect or you didn't anticipate them to make a change immediately. You
Right.
gave that relationship time to nurture and foster and grow into something that was meaningful. You were also cultivating an atmosphere of respect.
Yes, indeed. And at the same time, one of the most important things that I've learned is this. Well, a couple things. One, your most valuable asset that you have in your life when you deal with anybody is your credibility. That's priceless, okay? Your credibility. And so you're already talking to somebody who thinks you are not credible at all. That's why they're in that organization, because you are inferior and they are superior. So you have no credit, all right? But your credibility is of the utmost importance, because while you actively learning about someone else, at the very same time, you are passively teaching them about yourself. So you think you're gleaning all this information from them, but they're observing you and they're, imbibing or whatever they can get out of you. And they're evaluating it. And it's because, they're expecting you to behave the way they perceive you, which is negative. And when you don't behave that way, it causes a cognitive dissonance with them because he's not following the rules, or whatever. And they have to adjust to that and find out what's real and what's not real. And it troubles them. And then they finally decide, And what you don't want to happen is, well, Daryl's okay for a black guy. It's all those other black people. Okay. You will find that happening. But what I do is this: when I feel that I can trust somebody, I'm not afraid of them myself. But when I feel that I can trust somebody, that they're not going to hurt anybody else that I bring, to the table or whatever, I will invite some of my other friends, some of my Jewish friends, some of my other black friends, some of my white friends who look just like them but don't agree with their ideology. So that way that they see Daryl's not the exception. Maybe I'm the exception thinking this way, because he's seeing other people that don't fit the stereotypical image that he had in his mind, that his echo chamber around him keeps reinforcing and causing that cognitive dissonance. So then he has to make a decision. Do I disregard Daryl's skin color or the fact that this person is Jewish and change my ideological direction because I know that what I've learned is wrong? Or do I consider his skin color or consider the fact that he is a Muslim, a Jew, or whatever it is I don't like, and continue living a lie? That becomes their dilemma. And in most cases, people will follow the truth, the path of least resistance. But there will always be those who will go to their grave being hateful, violent, and racist, on any side.
Well, it's like your kindness and your generosity is making what feels like a vicious cycle that we're trapped in, with sort of like hate reciprocated by like hate, into a virtuous cycle. And going to an audience question sort of related to that, they're talking about how it seems like everybody's opinions is getting more and more extreme right now, and more militant on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of race.
Because we keep fueling fire with fire. Like Dr. King said, you don't drive out hate with hate. You drive out with love. You have to have that counterbalance. If you put your hand in hot water and it's burning you, you don't put more hot water on it. You turn on the cold water real quick. You need that counterbalance. So if somebody's hating on me, why don't I want to express hate back? Now, the only time I would express something similar back would be if somebody is physically trying to hurt me, and that's my only, way of getting out of it, is to put a stop to it by enacting the same thing. But I'm not going to, push out hate, because hate's coming in. That just increases the whole hate, and it just becomes, like you said, a vicious cycle. And you're right. That's what we're seeing politically. We saw it on TV the other night during the State of the Union.
Oh, goodness.
So we've got so many comments from the audience about you. You are my hero. Thank you for your inspiration and devotion. How do you cultivate more people whose curiosity and courage overpowers their defensiveness, intolerance, and fear? How do we make tens of million people who listen first, which is a wonderful organization who is co-streaming tonight, and converse with respect and curiosity with no intent to convert or malign?
Okay, you remember, let's go back to high school, junior high school, when we would have our school dance. And we're all excited about going to the dance on Saturday night. There's somebody that we really want to dance with, and she doesn't know it, but we're going to ask her to dance. Yeah, see, you've been there, Liz, I can tell. So let's go back there in our mind, and we go to the school dance. We're in the gym, and everybody's standing there with their back to the wall, eyeballing everybody else. And the band is playing great songs. You want to dance, but nobody wants to be the first person on the dance floor, right? Finally, somebody gets on the dance floor, and then everybody else gets on the dance floor. Let's be that person who is the first person on the dance floor. Okay, let's stop waiting for somebody else. We can do something on our own for once in our lives, and this is a positive thing. So let's not be afraid to converse. But don't go into it blindly. Know who you are, but and learn as much as you can about the other person, regardless of what the adversarial topic is, whether it's Republican, Democrat, black, white, Christian Jew, whatever it is on the opposite end, learn as abortion, pro-choice, whatever, learn the other person's position. Put yourself in that place and see how you would think. And then go in with your beliefs, because here's what happens. You start this far apart, you're at opposite ends of the spectrum, but you talk with your worst enemy or your biggest adversary for 5 minutes, you will find something in common, and that gap narrows. You talk for another 5 minutes, you find even more in common, and the gap narrows some more. And when you're right here, you are in a relationship with your adversary. Whether you like it or not, you are in a relationship with that person. You may not be going out and having dinner with the person, but you're having a cordial relationship with him or her. You talk some more, you find more in common. And now you're friendly. You're having a friendly relationship. Even though you may disagree on some things, you're having a friendly relationship. But when you've gotten to this point, you have found so much in common that that the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less. Because it's very hard to hate somebody when you're standing right there in front of them, having a conversation, speaking the same language. You both like the same James Bond movie, but perhaps he likes Sean Connery and you like Roger Moore. Okay, so what? You still like James Bond, or he thinks the king of rock and roll is Chuck Berry. The other one thinks it's Elvis Presley. Okay, but you still like rock and roll, So you have these things in common, and you develop that friendship, and you have this conversation. It's hard to hate that person, and that's what happened with the guy you're talking about, Liz. Well, it's Daryl. He didn't have any special power.
I have to imagine that the concept of be the example can be intimidating for some people. But from your perspective, if you start from a place of integrity, you said know yourself, know the values, be consistent with who you are, and the conversations you have as those two divisive points start to get closer. There are people watching that.
That's right.
The CNN clip that you shared, where the leader of the organization said, I like this person better than I like you, and the expectation should have been opposite. Somebody was curious about the nature of that relationship. Somebody wanted to find out what makes that relationship tick. Why does he have so much trust and so much love and respect for somebody he's supposed to be teaching us not to love and respect?
Right, because of that credibility. And the thing of it is I want to see these people, not just the first time I interview them. Okay, I got your story. Now I never see you again. I want to see them again. I invite them to my gigs. If I'm playing in their county, hey, if you're not doing anything Friday night, whatever, I'm playing over at so-and-so's bar. Come on out and see what I do. And they come, So I keep in contact with them, all right, and let them see me in my natural habitat, which is behind a piano playing rock and roll or country or whatever. And they can enjoy that, all right? My credibility is built up because I'll tell you what, like I said, while you are actively learning about someone else, you are passively teaching them about yourself. And if they find you not to be credible, it's over, because they already think you're not credible. And if you do the slightest thing wrong, that reinforces them. It exacerbates already what they think. So it's like, for example, if you ask some lady out on a date, and put it this way, you only have one opportunity to make a good first impression.
Yes.
Okay, you may have a second or third opportunity to make an impression if you're lucky, but you only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. And most people would judge you on their first impression of you. So if you ask somebody out and they go out with you, and for whatever reason, they're not impressed with you, maybe they caught you in a lie or whatever it was you did, your credibility is shot. And you say, hey, listen, I really enjoyed myself. Can I take you out again next week? They're like, no, I don't think so. Whatever, right? They're done. All right. So with these people, they're not coming to be converted. they're curious as to why a black man wants to know about why they want to be in the Klan and blah, blah, blah. But initially, they didn't know I was black. Okay, they thought I was a white guy coming to interview them. Of course, they freaked out when they saw me. But now everybody knows, because word travels quickly. But so now they're curious. I want to see them again. So I thanked them for their time. Maybe I didn't agree on anything with them that day, but I thanked them. I listened to them. I showed them that respect. I'm being fair. And I say, hey, listen, hey, I really appreciate your time. You've given me a lot of information. Let me absorb it. Let me process it. I might have a couple questions maybe in a couple weeks. Is it okay if I check back in with you and maybe, get together again, just review some things? Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Because even though they don't like me, I'm credible.
Right.
If I, attack their reality, they catch me in a lie. They say, "Nah, you got your interview. We're done. I don't need to see you anymore. Done."
Yes, yes. I like the manner of consistency that's emerging as a thing. No matter what the situation is, the person you encounter, you have the patience to allow that relationship to emerge and to develop. Even if it takes 2 weeks of follow-up, 6 weeks of follow-up, phone call, you allow that to be a part of how you pursue that conversation or that interaction.
There's no skin off my back to call somebody and check in on them.
Yeah.
See, hey, how you doing? I'll tell you what, check this out. The Klansman in the picture that I showed you, let me back up to it here. Right here. Okay, you see the guy that's facing me. The guy right there on the other side, you see just partial of him. He's the Imperial Wizard of that particular group. His name was Frank Ancona. Look him up, Ancona. But you got to put in Frank Ancona KKK because there's another Frank Ancona who's a car dealer. You don't want to, he has nothing to do with the Klan. So anyway, he was the Imperial Wizard. If of the largest Klan group in the country at the time, if he had lived for another year, he would have been out of the Klan because he and I were becoming very close. But he was murdered. I knew him very well. I knew the murderer very well. I went to this man's funeral and I participated in his funeral, not because I respect the Klan. I respected him for giving me the time and the interviews that he gave me. And, he was friendly to me. I did not agree with everything he stood for, but I could see him changing, and like I said, he was on his way out, but he was murdered. And I participated in the funeral. I played hymns on the piano during the church service and all that kind of thing. The whole Klan was there, and they saw that. And do you know what? They invited me to one of their rallies in South Dakota and one of their meetings in Kentucky. And I went and I spoke at their rally. I spoke at their meeting. And do you know, several people, not immediately, because they don't do anything in front of each other, right?
Yeah.
But the seed was planted. After things were over, a few days later, a couple weeks later, 3 of them quit. And I have their robes. I got them in the mail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow, that is extraordinary.
Now, I was in Custer, South Dakota for this rally. And I knew that what do you call it? Mount Rushmore is nearby. I wasn't sure how far it was. And so, when the rally was over, I done my speaking and stuff, and we're all sitting around. It's nighttime, and I said, "Isn't Mount Rushmore around here somewhere?" So a lot of people don't know this, but Mount Rushmore was carved by a Klansman. Yeah,
I know that.
I did
that's
not know
right.
that.
Yeah, yep. Check it out. I knew that a lot. Of course, the Klan knows it, but it's not in the history books. You got to research it. And anyway, so I said, "Isn't Mount Rushmore around here somewhere?" He goes, "Yeah, it's only 20 minutes up the road." I said, "Well, I'd like to go up there. Can you all take me up there tomorrow?" They said, "Yeah." So they came by my hotel and picked me up, drove me to Mount Rushmore, right? We hung out at Mount Rushmore, and had our pictures taken in front of, the mountain there and all that kind of stuff. So not only do I engage with them in the work that I do, but I engage with them on a social level so they can see me as any normal human being who wants to see a part of history. That's all. And that resonates with them. And then they wonder, how can I hate that guy? I never really knew him.
Right. And you allowed time for reflection.
Exactly.
You gave them something to reflect on as well.
Precisely.
So Daryl, we still see your picture instead of your face.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um,
Let me correct that for you.
So a question from the audience, heartfelt one. I'm a conservative leaning millennial and I'm concerned about the future as I've noticed that there are left of center people around my age who are intolerant of opposing opinions. And this causes me to stay quiet out of fear of being excluded or rejected based on my views. What are some things you would recommend to take the first step in order to at least respectfully share my ideas with people around my age?
Okay, first, you don't have to give up your views. There are people, left of center, right of center, this, that, and the other. Okay, whether you're conservative or liberal, there's people in the middle, people leaning this way or that way. Get over the fear. All right, be who you are. People will respect you for who you are, because if you present yourself as anybody else, it's going to eventually come out. I sing the blues, and there's an old blues song where the line says, "If the washing don't get you, the rinsing sure will." So, it all eventually comes out. Be who you are, my friend. Take your stance, but be open. Be willing to listen to somebody else, but share your views with them. Let them know why you are left of center, of being a conservative, or right of center, or wherever it is you may be. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, but also respect where they are and have these conversations. Walk across the cafeteria. You're not going to lose anything by doing that. Okay, if anything, you will gain some friends. If you don't gain the friend, you will gain respect. All right, you're not going to have anything less than you already had by doing that.
And by the way, I love the Laundromat Blues, Little Milton and Albert King.
Oh my goodness, Little Milton. Yes. Love Little Milton. He's passed away now.
Yeah.
I got to play some gigs with him.
All right.
So say a word about fear and how you see that as being a part of the challenge that we face.
Okay, so let me give you a quick story. The guy that you saw in the CNN video, all right, he didn't know I was Black. My secretary called him and set up the interview, and I told her, do not tell him that I'm Black. He was my first interview. And because I was already told by the guy I met at the Silver Dollar Lounge, don't fool with him, he will kill you. And this guy was genuinely concerned for my safety. So, because he liked me, he's coming to my gigs and stuff. And I went to him and said, hey, I want to interview Klan people all over the country. I want to start here in Maryland. Hook me up with the leader. He didn't want to do it. He was fearful for his safety and my safety if he took a Black man to this Klan leader. And I said, well, give me his phone number and his address and stuff. He did it very reluctantly and begged me not to tell the guy where I got his information. I said, okay. So I had my secretary call the guy and say, listen, just tell him that you work for somebody who's writing a book on the Klan. Would he consent to sitting down and giving me an interview? Do not tell Mr. Kelly that I'm Black. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't give him reason to ask. She said, okay. So the reason why I did that was not to deceive him or anything like that. I'm not deceptive that way. I figured that I wanted him to reject me in person once he saw me. All right. And give him the opportunity to see me and then let him decide if he wants to do the interview or leave me or whatever. Also, the fact that if he knew I was Black in advance and he accepted the invitation, in the interim, he would have time to prepare perhaps different answers for a Black interviewer than he would give to a white interviewer asking the same questions. So I wanted it to be spontaneous, candid. She understood, she called him, he agreed to do the interview, didn't ask what color I was. So when he showed up at the motel, he came with an armed bodyguard. And the guy had a gun in a holster on his hip. And the bodyguard walked in the room and saw me and just froze because he's looking for a white guy. And the Grand Dragon, Mr. Kelly, came in behind him and didn't realize the guy had stopped and bumped into his back and knocked the guy forward. And now they're all like looking around the room like, something's not right here. Is this an ambush, or did we get the wrong room number, or what's going on here? So I stood up and I displayed my hands like, hey, there's nothing in my hands. So they came in, I walked forward, I shook their hands, they shook hands, and Mr. Kelly had a seat. And the bodyguard stood at attention to his right. And I sat across a little lamp table from him, took the lamp off. I had a bag beside me, a black canvas bag. In my bag, I had a Bible and I had blank cassettes, and I put a cassette recorder in the table. And why did I have the Bible? Because the Klan claims to be a Christian organization, and they claim that the Bible preaches racial separation. So I wanted to be able to reach down and get my Bible and say, here, Mr. Kelly, please show me where it says blacks and whites must be separate. So I'm all prepared. So he and I are talking, and every time he made some biblical proclamation that I did not believe, I'd reach down to get my Bible for him to show me where. Or if the tape recorder ran out of tape, I'd reach down to get a fresh cassette. Every time I reached down like this, the bodyguard would reach up like this to his hip and put his hand on the butt of the gun. Now he's doing his job. That's his job, to protect his boss. I'm the enemy. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know what's in my bag. So he's doing his job. I got that. So I was cool with that. After about 45 minutes of that, he relaxed. And every time I went in the bag, he didn't move. He was cool. He realized there was no threat. So Mr. Kelly and I are just talking. And all of a sudden, a little over an hour into this thing, there was a very fast, very short noise that came out of nowhere. Went like a, and we all jumped. Like, what was it? And I knew that Mr. Kelly made the noise. How did I know that? Because I didn't make it. So he had to have made it. Process of elimination, right? And so I jumped up out of my chair because I was going to come across that table because I feared for my life. I feared for my life because in my head, I'm thinking, what did I do to cause him to go off and make some weird noise? And I'm thinking about that other Klansman telling me, Daryl, don't fool with Roger Kelly. He'll kill you. So I didn't want to die that day. My secretary is sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs in the room. And I'm getting ready to come across that table, grab him, grab the bodyguard, slam them down to the ground, and take away the bodyguard's gun. I'm not armed. My secretary is not armed. So I've gone into survival mode. And there are very few things you can do. One is to do a preemptive strike, get them before they get you. So that's what I was on my way to do. When I came up, I'm looking right into his face, into his eyes. And I didn't say a word, but I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were saying to him, what did you just do? His eyes had fixated on my eyes, and his eyes were asking me the same question. What did you just do? And the bodyguard had his hand on his gun again, looking at both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do? Well, Mary, my secretary, she's sitting on the dresser. She realized what had happened, and she began explaining it. Before they even arrived, I sent her down the hallway with some money to get soda pop out of the machine, out of the vending machine, put it in the ice bucket, fill it with ice, get it cold, because I want to be able to offer my guest a cold drink, if he came in the room. And so it was sitting over there on the dresser, and we'd long ago forgotten about it because we're so engaged. The ice was melting, and the cans were falling down the ice. That was it. Somebody almost got shot over an ice cube, over a melting ice cube. But we all began laughing when she explained it to us. And that proved that we all are human beings. We felt fear, we felt relief. But here's the lesson learned. All because some foreign being that bucket of ice cans of soda, of which we were ignorant, had entered our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we became fearful of each other. So ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things of which we're ignorant, that noise. If we don't address that fear will escalate into hatred because we hate the things that frighten us. If you don't address that hatred, that will escalate into destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because they scare us. But guess what? At the end of the day, they may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant. So I say this, let's forget about the destruction. Forget it. What's destroyed is not coming back. All right. That's just a symptom of the nucleus. Let's forget about the hatred. That's another symptom of the nucleus, the root cause. Let's forget about the fear, another byproduct of the root cause. The root cause is ignorance. If we cure the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to get mad about and destroy. The good thing is this: there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education and exposure. And that is where we need to devote our time, our energy, our money, and our efforts into curing that ignorance. And then we won't have to worry about all of those other byproducts: fear, hate, and destruction. And we can do it. We gotta redirect our way of thinking. It's sort of like how we work now. We always thought about getting up and leaving the house and going to a job and sitting behind a desk. Now we're reprogramming that we can telecommute and work from home. So we got to rechange our way of thinking as how we address these issues. And we can do it because I've been doing it.
So we've got about 5 more minutes, and I'll defer to Nasheed for a question. We're not done, but I want to ask the audience if they'll take just a moment. We're working on this social cohesion impact measure project. And if you could take a look at the link that Eliza just put in the chat, if you could take a moment while we're finishing the program and right when we finish to go ahead and finish that. That's what makes it science. And it's this really big, cool project that we're doing. And also, if you do the pre and the post, you have a chance to win a $100 gift card. So Nasheed, I've got a favorite question I want to ask. I'll defer to you to ask the next one.
Okay. Well, the words you share have a measure of poetry to it. And there's a kind of a rhythm in the relationships that you allow to occur. You plant a seed, you nurture it with water and conversation and understanding and respect, and you watch it grow. The gentleman you said you went to the funeral of, you mentioned something that I wanted to make sure came to light. You saw the growth in him. You saw the evolution in his thought. And when did you, in your travels and learning from people, when did you realize you, Mr. Davis, had the ability to see the good in people, as opposed to just a result, to see that evolution in people? That's a skill.
I began seeing it the more I would converse with these people, because I never dreamed I would see them more than once. It was never my intent to make friends. It was never my intent to convert. All I want to know was, how can you hate me when you don't know me? So all I want to know, that I don't need to see you again. But when you're talking to somebody, oh, you like that? Well, I like that too. Yeah, I saw that movie. Yeah, I thought that part was funny, and then you're beginning a relationship that you never dreamed about, because I came in thinking a tiger does not change his stripes. Why would a Klansman change his robe and hood? But guess what? I was wrong. I learned something. So I'm capable of learning things too.
Now I like that. You saw the learning and evolution in yourself. That's the point of integrity. And so when you saw your growth, you were able to identify growth in others.
Right.
Take away, Liz.
And what I would say to anybody out there, listen, I am just a rock and roll piano player. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist. I probably should be. I probably make more money than I do playing rock and roll.
No, you're exceptional. You're exceptional.
But if I can do this as a rock and roll piano player, any one of you all can do this, seriously.
Perfect segue to this question from Kami, who directs the USC Center for the Political Future. If you had a magic wand, how would you get more people to reconcile around race and politics? How would you create, and I love this vision, this picture in our heads, how would you create a force of 33 million Daryl Davises, which is just 10% of the US population?
Well, you know what? You, Liz, and you, Nasheed, are creating them right now by the people, like the gentleman who wrote in his chat about how do you overcome the fear about speaking to people with whom you disagree. You are helping to create those kinds of people because we're giving them the tools and the tips. They're interested in doing this work.
Mhm.
So it's important. And I really appreciate, you're having me on this show because a lot of people don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. It's the elephant in the room that we don't talk about. But you all, have taken that bold step to have these conversations and share them with your public. So thank you all very much for helping to create that.
Your film opens with a RFK quote. I don't know if you can call that up. I have a longer version of it, but it's sort of what you've said reminds me of that. It says, few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us work to change a small portion of events. And then basically that becomes who our generation is and what we do.
Yes, indeed.
Nice.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, gentlemen, for spending this time with us tonight. I really have had tears in my eyes most of the time. I am so touched and honored. Mr. Davis, just wow. Thank you for being who you are and who you inspire us to become.
Now listen, we've sat on this thing here for a couple of hours. You need to call me Daryl.
All right.
Daryl.
Thank you.
Any closing thoughts from you?
I would just say, Daryl, you set the bar. You set the bar. You found a wonderful way to blend scholarship, because you're a wonderful researcher, humanity and understanding people, but also what's in yourself. You're very personable, and I believe you are allowing people to see that they can be that change that they want in the world. And I also want to make sure that the general public who are listening and participating take a look at Village Square's list of podcasts and programs, not just this one, but the ones in the past. We look at truth, we look at power, and we look at civic engagement. And we have a lot on the horizon. So thank you.
I'm gonna, as an end cap to your comment, Nasheed, we got a comment from the audience that you just used the term human decency. Isn't this fundamentally about greater human understanding, which is the purpose of the humanities? I thought you'd
Yes.
like that comment.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending this time with us. On behalf of Florida Humanities, the Village Square, and our streaming partners, we'd like to thank all of you out in the audience for being with us too. Good night, everyone.
Good night.